McFly!
It was not good.
Fired! Jesus Christ.
That goes out of his way to throw up the gay studio audience applause sign, and then for Captain America then to say, keep on keeping on, man. Okay, back to everyone else.
Avengers Endgame!
Welcome into Film Tank, the weekly podcast that covers both new and classic cinema. On this episode of Film Tank, we discuss the new Marvel film, which is Avengers Endgame. If you would like to get in touch with Film Tank, you can always email us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Film Tank Show. And you can listen to all of our episodes on our website, filmtankshow.com, or on iTunes. And now, here are your hosts, Nick Cheney, Toussaint Egan, and myself, Alex Diekman. Hey everybody, welcome in to episode 189 of Film Tank. As always, Alex Diekman and my guys, Nick Cheney.
Hey!
And Toussaint Egan.
Hey!
That was good.
Yeah. Oh.
Toussaint's been on a roll lately.
No.
Our friend Anna, back to join us.
Hello.
Hey!
Hey! Where'd you come from? Hey!
Okay.
I was going to say the other side of Doctor Strange's orange sparkly things. That's where I was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Portals?
I believe that's the technical term.
Yeah.
Orange sparkly things.
Well,
His
that's
jazz
what
hands.
Peter Parker said.
What he uses his sling ring to make those appear.
They're like a beehive,
Yeah.
Sure.
but like instead of babies, it's superheroes that come out.
Again, thank you so much for having me back.
Yes,
I love-
of course.
No.
Thank you for
We
coming
always,
back.
we always love having you, and we don't have to talk about Bohemian Rhapsody this time, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
We're like Bohemian Crap City
We should post the link on our Facebook
to our
page.
episodes.
Well, no, that. On our Facebook page, we should post the link to Brian sent us the 1-minute edit of the
Goodfellas, yeah, I
scene,
love
if
that.
It were,
yeah.
edited
He just
like
zooms in
Bohemian
on the
Rhapsody.
lamp. Like, funny, how do you mean? Funny, how do you mean? Huh?
It's so stupid, but it's also pretty fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's really
I don't
on
know.
point.
It was
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyways, thankfully, we're not talking about Bohemian Rhapsody today or any other Rami Malek films.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that Bond 25 intro video, if that didn't get you excited.
Well, Mr. Bond's not going to have an easy time of it. I'm going to let you know that. He's not going to have an easy time of it. He's not going to have an easy time of it, Alex.
God, I hope that guy's career crumbles.
What, Rami Allen?
Yeah.
Alex?
Do you think Rami
No,
Malek?
I love him as Mr. Robot.
That's okay.
I like him as Mr. Robot. I don't like him in anything else because he acts like a fucking robot.
First of all, Christian Slater's Mr. Robot.
Oh, okay. Now we're going to get pedantic now. All right.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
no, Nick was right. Mr. Robot on the show
That's
is
true,
Christian
yeah,
Slater.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Rami
Saying-
Malek is still the main character.
Yeah, I
Do you
know.
also think Frankenstein was a monster?
Oh, get out of here. Fuck out of here. It's Frankenstein's monster, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why are you mocking me?
Yeah, and then he left and he formed a family, and they're called the Munsters.
That's just factually inaccurate.
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 So today, we are talking
We're
about...
not done discussing this.
Yes, we are. Continue, Alex.
We are talking about the finale to the current Avengers
Thing.
iteration, sort of.
Yeah.
The Infinity Saga.
Yes, which had a hard time at certain points
Being
of
the
it.
story.
But you know what?
But
What? Just really quickly. I mean, what 22 episode season doesn't have a few rough patches along the way?
Yeah.
it's good.
I guess.
Nice.
Good one.
Well done. I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. God damn it.
So Avengers Endgame surrounds the events after the devastating Infinity War.
Devastating is a word.
Where the universe is in ruins. With the help of the remaining allies, the Avengers assemble once more in order to undo Thanos' actions and restore order to the universe. So Avengers Endgame stars...
Oh boy, here we go.
Deep breath.
Are you really gonna do this?
I'm going for it.
Yep.
Robert Downey Jr., Chris
Go take a
Evans.
shit.
What the fuck, man? You just stole my thunder. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Rudd, Benedict Cumberbatch, Chadwick Boseman, Brie Larson, Tom Holland, Karen Gilliam, Zoe Saldana, Evangeline Lilly, Tessa Thompson, Rene Russo returning as Frigga, Elizabeth Olsen, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Tom Hiddleston, Denis Guerilla, Benedict Wong, Pom Klementieff, Dave Bautista, Letitia Wright, John Slattery sort of returning as Howard Stark, Tilda Swinton making a very interesting return as the Ancient One, Jon Favreau back as Happy Hogan, also Haley Atwell returning as Peggy Carter even though her show was canceled, archive footage of Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, Marissa Tomei, Taika Waititi, for whatever reason, is in this somehow.
Yeah, he's the rock guy.
I know.
The rock guy, yeah.
Oh, he's that. Okay.
Angela Bassett, the young and old version of Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, William Hurt, Colby Smothers, Sean Gunn, Winston Duke, Linda Cardellini, Frank Grillo, James Darcy as Jarvis, who was on one of the shows, Agent Carter,
Yeah.
Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, Gwyneth Paltrow, Robert Redford, for whatever reason, Chris Pratt, Samuel L. Jackson, Joe Russo as the grieving gay man.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
Yes, we are.
Stan Lee, Calvin Mulvey.
Wait a minute.
Ken Jeong was in this for
Well,
whatever reason.
that's not for whatever reason. Ken Jeong and Yvette Nicole Brown were in this because whenever the Russos direct one of these, they, as an in joke, put an actor from the show Community.
Yeah.
Jim Rash has been in one of them.
And,
Abed
Abed,
was
yeah.
in another
Abed,
one.
yeah.
So that's more just a funny little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ty Simpkins, who was in Iron Man 3, makes a small appearance
Ty
here.
Simpkins, the little kid?
What?
I don't know. Who's Ty Simpkins?
He's the guy who plays Harley Keener in Iron Man 3.
Who's Harley Keener?
He's the little kid from Iron Man 3. who
Okay, I
helped-
just
That's
the
literally
little
what he
kid.
just
I
said.
thought you meant he
But
was a
now
little
he's
kid
like-
in this, but he's like a
Now he's
But that's
grown
what I
up.
was asking. Is
A
it
teenager.
that person?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So now is it the same actor?
Yes.
Like when he was a little kid
That's
and
nuts.
now when
now he's a teenager.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I had
Yep.
thought for some reason too little time had passed to show, so I thought maybe it was
It's been
somebody
6
else.
years.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
That
I just
was-
didn't know if it was or was not.
That was that one kid at the
funeral, right?
Yeah.
the end that nobody knew who he was, and it was like, oh wait, that's the kid from Iron Man 3.
Oh, I
Like,
know who
whoa.
it was.
I didn't know who he was.
I only assumed that's who it was because it was so random
Who else could it be? Yeah.
that, like, not even who else, but just like there's no answer to be given because, frankly, why would that kid be at that fucking funeral
Right.
to begin with?
That's Tony's secret love child.
So then I guess I was like, I guess that's him.
Yeah.
But that was really random.
And Josh Brolin. So,
And that's our episode for Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Tune in next week. Thank you guys. Yeah, sorry.
So I think we should take each actor one by one and just kind of parse through their performances, and then we'll talk about the movie.
Let's not do that.
oh boy. So who wants to go first? Who wants to take their first crack at this?
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, you do it.
All right. Yeah, so this is the 22nd film in this little series.
Boy, does it feel like it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because overall, I gotta say that I actually thought this was pretty entertaining. I thought that it was in no way worth 22 films, and it definitely should not inspire 22 more. But as a culmination of at least the two main white dudes, Mr. Chris and Robert, I thought it was a decent enough closure to move past that era, if we're allowed to at least. And obviously, judging by the movie, we're going to in a general sense. But overall, I thought that this was everything that Infinity War was not, which was actually pretty well paced. And I mean, it's 3 hours, it's overbloated like all of them are. So I guess I'm kind of grading on a curve here compared to other Marvel outings. But overall, I thought the 3-act structure of pretty much post-grief, the time heist, and then the big battle, like that was the 3 kind of major set pieces.
Yeah.
I thought it did a pretty good job weaving in and out of those, and I thought that like a really good ratio of characters actually got a good moment. Nobody was going to be really done justice other than pretty much the 2 main and maybe a few others like I I'm kind of blanking on who I think would have maybe had as much. I guess it kind of all comes down to who they are as people. Like, Ant-Man, I thought, was just perfectly used. Like, he was in no way, I thought, oversaturated. But he did a lot of heavy lifting in making some of these scenes more bearable just for the common layperson.
Ant-Man is just better overall in group ensembles than just in his own
He
individual stuff. And I'm saying that I did not like Ant-Man and the Wasp.
But that was an ensemble film compared to his first
to his
outing.
first films. Like, I was like, he's just better playing off somebody else where he's not the straight man. He can't be a straight man. Yeah. He has to be the comic relief, and he has to have a foil, somebody else to bounce off of. And that's why, like, he's really good with the Wasp.
Yeah. But I from its very rip-off of The Leftovers opening, which I very much enjoyed. Like, I thought it was a good scene.
Yeah.
But I also felt like that was kind of like clearly the Russos, I think, like The Leftovers. Like, I'm sorry, but it just felt exactly like a scene from
they're
that
at
show.
When they're at the grief counseling center, there's a poster there that is like pretty much out of The Leftovers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That
Did they literally just go onto the lot where they were filming The Leftovers and steal one of the fucking props there?
Seemed like it in that first 10 minutes.
Anna, have you ever watched any of The Leftovers, by the way?
No, but
it's a fantastic television show.
That's what I've heard, and I know the gist of it from you guys having talked about it. So I think it's interesting that, like, in the beginning is basically like what you think is identical to The Leftovers. But now I'm curious to watch it.
Yeah. No, and I think the movie is all the better for it that it doesn't jump right in, and instead it gets to kind of feel the fallout from this. And I think there are some serious problems here as well. This is probably the worst, I would say, blatant fake, or I should say faux feminism that Marvel has ever participated in.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the who run the world girls moment at the end?
That was pretty awful, because if that's all you get in a 3-hour film, that's pretty bad. And
I don't. You know what? There was a similar moment in Infinity War.
I just don't even think that movie's any good to begin with. I don't even remember that.
There's a very similar moment to that where, like, they're all fighting, and they're fighting the...
That one I felt like was at least slightly more teamwork based, like we actually got to follow it for at least a good 20 to 30 seconds. Here it was literally they band together to let a man carry something to a truck. Like, that is the extent of their representation on screen. I mean, I can think of cool moments that a lot of dudes did, from Spider-Man swooping in to, obviously, now I'm not saying this should have happened for everybody, but like Captain America wielding the hammer. I mean, it seemed like so many people got to do something, and they were not able to define themselves outside of their kinship to each other.
They were basically just like on an escort mission to basically escort this person to like get from point A to point B. And I don't. For anyone who really, really enjoyed that scene, I'm not trying to undercut that. I'm just saying that it felt, at least from my perspective, like I would be totally cool with that scene. I'm cool with that scene in principle. I would like to see that, but the way that it was shot and the way that it was sort of like panned over, it reminded me of the ending of Mortal Kombat 2 Annihilation, where they just panned over like all the bad guys that they're supposed to be fighting in the next movie that never got made. And I'm just like, this is some corny ass Mortal Kombat like lineup bullshit. Choose your fighter. And I was like, I hate that shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a few other standout bad moments that I thought, like Joe Russo playing the grieving gay guy. That was really bad, because that's Disney once again pretending to at all listen to criticisms of its blanket corporate franchise.
I heard there was supposed to be like gay representation in this movie. Like I heard a hint.
That was it.
I heard a hint of that before going in, and I sort of like put it out of my mind, because I don't give a shit about spoilers or any of the other shit. Like, especially when it comes to these movies, I already know what's gonna fucking happen at the end, but you don't know how it's gonna happen. I was like, sure, whatever, I don't give a shit. And I thought, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, cool, Carol Danvers is gonna smooch Valkyrie. That's really awesome. I'm here for it. And it was like, that shit didn't happen. I'm just like, wait a minute. Oh, he was gay?
I mean, they said...
Yeah, I know, right? But I was just like, but it was such a...
It wasn't a twist.
It was such a slight moment where I was just like,
actually,
that's it?
I wouldn't say it was slight.
That's it?
Because what I thought was stupid was it goes out of his way to throw up the gay studio audience applause sign, and then for Captain America then to say, keep on keeping on, man. Okay, back to everyone else.
Yeah.
What do we got going on here? Oh, we're all grieving, right? Okay. Oh, shit, I have to go. I'm not really supposed to be here. That just felt really fucking lame, and it just kind of makes me mad that people are still crediting Disney and Marvel at all for being progressive, because they're still not.
Yeah.
A Black Panther, a Captain Marvel, a grieving gay Joe Russo does not a melting pot make. And back really quick to the positive before I finish it off and get to the next person. Overall, though, I just thought that I was surprised that, like I said earlier, I was not a big fan of Infinity War, so I was ready to really kind of probably be disappointed by this. But ultimately, I think the structure of this movie, because of the fact of the effects of Infinity War, are in effect at the beginning of this movie, so we have a lot less people to deal with until the culmination in the final battle.
Which is a good thing, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say it. I thought that made this movie a lot better. And frankly, I was pretty taken by... I mean, I know they made those choices already in Infinity War, but the group of people we have that survive is actually a slightly interesting group outside of the core 6 Avengers, because I would say it's not the... All of them, I wouldn't say, are not all the obvious choices. Like, to have Rocket Raccoon and... Nebula and Falcon. Like,
fuck Falcon.
I don't know, just...
Falcon was dead.
Wait, yeah, not Falcon. What?
It was War Machine.
Oh, yeah.
War Machine. I don't know, I just thought it was slightly... It would have been a lot, like... I don't know, I could have seen them, like, really... Obviously, they didn't, but, like, trying to rest on their laurels and make sure that a Spider-Man is still there, or just going the extra mile to, like, any cash cow that they have to keep around, and just... But they didn't, and this movie I thought worked all the better, because it really did feel like this... We're doing this because we have to do it, not because we work so well together, and I just thought the chemistry was pretty much right on. And overall, I would say that it was actually pretty fun. I thought almost all of the callbacks to previous installments were actually well done, which I was kind of surprised by. The elevator scene with Captain was fantastic, and that's the kind of ingenuity that I don't expect from a Marvel Easter egg, because I usually expect it to be one of two things, which is use image enhancement to see what's on the computer screen in the background to see that Doctor Strange is coming to a theater near you.
That was the Russos harkening back to like one of their own films for the Winter Soldier. So at least I think it's not a surprise that they would be able to do that. Like,
not a surprise.
It was well done.
I'm just saying they didn't rest on the reference. Mm-hmm. They actually have a history with themselves, yes, but then they also subvert its own expectations, and things are allowed to happen in a different...
What's great about that, too, is not only... Like, that gives you the answer to something that really nobody ever cared about and nobody ever needed an answer to, but it's fun to find out just the, like seeing like the sort of after effects of what happened after the first Avengers fight ended, of the how do these people literally get the fuck out of the building after this with the scepter and the Tesseract? Like, did they just walk out the front door? Yes, they did. Yep. It's something so simple, but at the same time, like, I was extremely interested in that scene just to see how it proceeded.
Yeah. And I was going to say one more thing, and then I'll pass it off to someone, which is that the elevator scene where they do the inverse of the Winter Soldier scene, in which Captain America finds himself, instead of in an elevator that is swarming with people, he finds himself entering an elevator that is already swarmed with the same kind of agents who are supposed to be the good guys but aren't. And what I loved about that scene was that I thought, like, the cheap thing to do, which is what I thought they were going to do, was going to be let's recreate it, but do it maybe a little differently this time. Like, instead of attacking here, he attacks there. But it felt to me like that's the fun of a time travel movie, or like in playing like a video game like Hitman, where when you do the run more than once, you can know what can happen. So therefore, having previous knowledge of something he shouldn't have in that timeline can only help, because then he's actually able to just walk right out, which is way more badass than if they would have had him like just try to beat the shit out of him again. So.
Yep, that's exactly how I play Hitman.
Yep. So overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of Marvel problems present, but this is probably the best that this bloat connectedness is ever going to be outside of standalone, if they ever do those again. Movies can be. So, yeah, it was a good ride.
Yeah. I'll take it on. I thought this movie was okay. I thought it was just okay. I wasn't blown away by it. I didn't shed any tears. There was one moment that actually surprisingly affected me more than I thought it would, given my relative lack of investment in that one character. But overall, I really did enjoy.
Could you tell us which
I
character?
will. Yeah, I overall really did enjoy. I think that the first half of this film is definitely the best, in my opinion. Just the world that it sets up in a post-snap world, and like seeing people react and like write about it like online, just like you can really tell the people who have watched The Leftovers and who haven't watched The Leftovers, and it's like, oh man, it'd be so cool to like see what happens with this world, like how it expands out. I was like, man, you should watch The Leftovers.
The craziest thing is
holy shit,
The Leftovers is like the percentage is
much higher.
No,
isn't it?
No, it's like much lower.
Oh yeah, it is.
Like it's only supposed to be like 7% or 5% or whatever.
Yeah.
Here, it's 50% of the entire population has
Right.
been wiped out, and yet they look like they're doing pretty okay. I
After
mean,
5 years.
grieving wise, obviously.
Well,
but
they got superheroes to help them out.
I get, but they didn't seem like they were up to much.
Yeah, they're not really up to much. They're just like eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches and crying into their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. The one character whose moment like affected me especially was Captain America, and it wasn't even the ending. It was when he picked up the hammer. Like I was really taken aback by that, because not only was it a badass moment, but like the moment
That was the moment that was the signature moment in the theater of people being like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yeah, I was like, but when he picked up the hammer, like the first thing, and like Thor is like, I knew it, because that's a callback all the way to Age of Ultron when they were just like shooting the shit and doing the whole practice test of who could actually lift the hammer, and it's just like to think that this guy, like I think about the first scene that you see him in First Avengers, when he's just this scrawny kid from Brooklyn just getting the shit beat out of him in the back alley, and just like, I can do this all day, and just literally just getting his fade run, right? And who would think that kid would, and the reason why he's able to pick up the hammer is not because he has the super serum shit like that. It's because he's
worthy.
He relatively like stayed the same person, and through all the things that he's experienced and all the things that he's lost, he was still able to hold on to and retain that quality about himself to just try to do the right thing. And who would have ever thought that just this scrawny kid from Brooklyn would be worthy of the hammer of Thor? That was a fucking King Arthur moment, and that just really that really amped me up. I love that.
I will say that moment, paralleled with Tony's sacrifice, does have a complementary arc throughout this movie, and I guess over the franchise as a whole.
Tony's arc has just been reset and redone over and over and over again.
Okay.
Going in a different direction. But
Sorry.
thank you.
Yeah.
Where I was going to say is, one is about a guy learning that he is as good as he thinks he can be, and the other one is about a guy learning that he can be better than he has been. And I felt like that dovetailed nicely between those two moments of the hammer and the sacrifice.
Yeah. I just really enjoyed that moment. I didn't enjoy the final battle as much as I wish I did. Like, it just felt like the Battle of Moranon from, like, Return of the King, just with action figures. Like, when Thor and Iron Man and Captain America are teaming up to fight Thanos initially, and then Thor hits, like, Iron Man with the whole, like, Thunderbolt and goes for the phase blasters, and he's shooting all the lasers at him. I'm just like, oh, that'll make a lovely toy for a kid somewhere. But it's just like, it felt like a fucking toy commercial in, like, a lot of ways. And, like, the enemy design just really didn't do anything for me. And it just, yeah, it was a big blowout moment that everybody was waiting for. And I know that it speaks to the gratifications of that, but it just, I don't know how it could have been better. I'm just saying that that's kind of where it landed for me. You know, that was not the most interesting part of this film for me. I thought the time heist was really interesting, given the fact that first Tony decides to not do it, and then he decides to come back because he realizes he solved the equation to do it. And then there's that whole explanation from Banner talking to, I think, Rhodes. roadies, like when they're talking about, it's like, yeah, the whole Back to the Future or whatever, like timeline stuff like that doesn't work like that. Die Hard, yeah, they made it.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah, Hot Tub Time Machine. Like now, I know these films exist in that universe because they've already confirmed that Aliens and Star Wars and all this other stuff like exists in there. I wonder if Disney exists in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It has to.
I wonder if that's a little too meta. I wonder if that's
it's not too meta for Disney.
It's not too meta for Disney.
Yeah.
That was great.
But let's see.
Tucson just did the bend and snap from Legally Blonde.
Yeah. Where was I? What was I talking about before this?
You were talking about the look of the final scene. I actually had a thought on that real quick, by the way. Even though I, for the most part, absolutely dug the final scene, as soon as it started, I thought it looked really close to the final battle scene in Ready Player One.
Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah.
It's
basically the same sort of like affect. Yeah.
That's not good.
No, it's not. It's not good. Yeah, they didn't even have Chucky or the fucking like Gundam in it. So why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just felt like it didn't.
Gratuitous fan service that just throws everything.
I'm
at the
okay
wall.
with.
That's what it's going to be.
I'm okay
if you're
with
going to
fan
see
service.
Endgame.
Like I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be a little bit better, and I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Okay. Now I remember what I was saying. I thought it was weird when Banner is explaining the whole plan about like, okay, so if you go back into the past and that becomes your present, and the future that you came from is actually your past, and you can't really change anything. You just created like a branching timeline and other stuff like that. And I'm just like, why? I'm still trying to square that. It's like, so the whole plan. They never explain the plan, mind you. It's a heist. And you've seen a lot of fucking heist movies, and usually a big part of the heist like movie, like sort of like formula, is that they explain exactly where they're going to go. They run through different trials. They explain what the plan is, but they sort of like kept that from the actual audience.
Well, they usually aren't going back in time.
I know, right? But like it's a heist, and just like you'd think that they would explain that a little bit. Maybe they didn't have room.
I don't think the stealing was the big part that they couldn't do. I think it was just the don't break the timeline thing, which I'm not saying it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah,
but here's the thing. Like, here's the thing that I don't get. So Tony only consented to actually helping out when he was like, okay, so I want to make things whole again, but I can't lose what I already have. Like I can't just end up losing Morgan. I can't end up losing my life with my wife and stuff like that. As long as that does not happen, like I am willing.
Which that's not really how that works.
I know that's exactly what. That's exactly it.
That was,
and I was just like, how can you fucking guarantee that?
Character. The idea was that I thought, like, he was trying to say, I'm uncomfortable with this because I'm probably happy in the first time in a while and whatnot. But I should probably do this.
He's
but
one of the few people that this worked out for.
Right, but it's one of those things. It's a lie agreed upon. Like, but we're going to make sure that this works out because I can't not do it. So that's why his sacrifice is ultimately a good character moment because he goes back on that knowing that that's not how it works.
But it's not even that particular sacrifice. It's the risk of actually like losing Morgan and the life that he has now.
I think he means just death. Like.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think he meant like I can't lose them. Like, really?
I thought he
the whole time.
My reading was that he can't go back and change it to the point where his daughter doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's what I
understood too.
Well, okay, and I guess I kind of got that too in the sense that
didn't make
I don't
sense
think
to me.
anyone was like arguing that. I think he was putting that out there to say I'll help you steal the stones. But we're not going to pretend like deaths that already happened. We can undo like vision or something.
No, but at the same time, it's a weird compromise because usually when you think about changing a event that's happened by going back in time, you think about trying to put things back to the way they were.
Right.
Where this is a weird situation where they're like, well, we really want to keep Biff World, but we also want to have things we were, so we want those to both be together.
And now we live in it.
Well, and I think too that's also just a little tiny compromise between the guy who wants to save everybody and a person like Iron Man, who's the guy.
I mean, is it really that tiny of a compromise?
Well, in the sense that if you have this power and you make it, then what's to stop you from going before? Like when they made a joke about killing Thanos as a baby, which, by the way, dear listeners, if you want to see what would happen, read the Cosmic Ghost Rider comics, which is fantastic, where Cosmic Ghost Rider comes up against that very thing. And it's fantastic. Anyway, I don't know. I thought that was more thematic. Like, I don't want to lose what I have. Like, I'm not saying that's not what he literally meant.
I'm not saying that that's not how anybody would feel in that situation either. I guess more so what I'm thinking is that it seems like you don't you want to have your cake and eat it too there.
Yeah.
But also too, if you're Marvel, this is. No, I don't want to say uncharted territory, but the idea of mixing the new world and the old world together in the timeline
by the end
is what I think actually makes the next Spider-Man somewhat interesting.
So
now.
can I say one thing really quick?
Yeah.
Which is this. I pretty much don't think there are plot holes in this, not because there aren't, but because I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, time travel is time travel, whatever.
Yeah, I don't care.
But I do have one question, because this seemed less like a plot hole and more just like, did I miss something?
An oversight?
Yeah. In the very end, in the montage where you're seeing everybody kind of post the funeral, do we see a scene with Ant-Man, and who is he with? Is he with, I mean, Scott, really, but is he with...
it's with Hope.
Hope.
He's with his daughter.
And his daughter. And how old is his daughter there?
I don't know. She's like 17.
See, I was actually thinking about this.
Because
Because
if she's 17...
He sees her earlier in the film.
Right. As that age, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So if she's 17, why is Spider-Man's friend still his age?
Because he went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went away?
I think my
He
assumption...
got snapped away.
My assumption is that all
Yeah.
of Peter Parker's classmates got snapped too, and they all came back. That's why everyone's the same age.
No. That's why it's going to be fun, I think. Which is what I'm saying, is that theoretically half of them got snapped away.
Okay.
So when they go back to be in high school, half of their friends are now 5 years older.
Yeah, have already graduated and, like, moved on. And
So, like,
Well,
they're going to have friends that are
But
like...
why isn't his friend...
Because he got snapped away,
Because
too.
The friend
he got
did?
snapped too.
Yeah.
So that means
We know that?
Zendaya...
I don't know, but that's what I'm assuming.
That's
Okay,
We're
well, we
gonna-
don't know that.
Well, that's the
So
thing.
that's
is,
the big thing. I
but-
just want to make... You're saying that like it's such a...
I'm not... I'm
Okay.
But that's the thing is
I-
that we do know that because his friend was there and he was also in school.
right.
Well...
His friend was there
Right.
at school.
Like, that's
They
the
were
only
saying-
way he could be that age.
I've
Yeah.
thought
As if he
about-
got...
Yeah,
Yes.
I've thought
Okay.
about what you're saying, and my assumption is that's what happened.
All right. I guess that makes
I didn't think
sense, and
about
I
what
hope
you
that they at
mentioned,
least
Alex.
throw one line
What's
of
that?
dialogue just to make it show that they've thought about it, because that really confused me in the sense that, like,
My guess is that's going to be a big part of the storyline in the next
then
film.
why are they going on a
Yeah.
fucking field trip?
Because that's what high schoolers do. I didn't think of the fact that half of their friends would move on to be 5 years older, and then half of them would still be in
And
class.
now they have to deal with that shit.
Exactly, which means Zendaya also got snapped and came back because she's going to be in Far From
God, I
Home.
really
MJ.
hope that Flash Thompson did not get taken.
I hate that.
Oh, the guy
yeah, I
from,
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
That way, maybe we can get a different...
All right,
casting.
I'm gonna close out my initial thoughts. You know, it's easy to like look at these films and say that they're very slight and they're generic and they have no substance to them. And you know, like a lot of those criticisms are right. And guess what? I'm not gonna fucking complain about like Avengers Endgame being slight, because if you had seen any one of the 21 other previous films in this fucking series, this is exactly like playing in the same easy bake mold as that. It's just more of it, and like if you're into that type of shit, fine, that's cool. I'm not gonna fucking complain about Frosted Flakes lacking a source of protein. Okay, I'm not gonna eat Frosted Flakes for fucking dinner. Why the fuck are you going to Avengers Endgame for anything resounding like I don't know, like pathos or substance or shit like that? It's a fucking movie spectacle. I don't give a shit. It's fine. So yeah, it's an okay movie. It's not a great movie. I don't think that it's the cinematic like event of the decade or any shit like that. I think that's really overblown. Let's just enjoy this moment while we can. And yeah, who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Yes, please.
Okay, Avengers Endgame. I, first of all, was looking forward to this being called Infinity War Part 2, but then the studio changed the title, and I guess I'm okay with that. So, I loved this movie.
Still bitter.
Should have called it Avengers Time Heist.
Avengers
I feel
Time
like
Heist.
here's my thing. when they decided that they were gonna not name it Infinity War Part 2,
Okay.
and they were really secretive about what the title was gonna be, I thought to myself, this better be something worthwhile.
Exactly.
And it wasn't. So,
Yep.
that's unfortunately.
The Rise of Stark.
I'll somewhat agree with Tucson here. Is that I feel like that's Marvel in a nutshell, where they're like trying to be like, look at what we have over here.
We have a crying gay man.
I mean, and they come up with things that are just like, oh, okay. But at the same time, they also are clearly they've created this novelty in this cinematic universe, and it has become wildly sick. Like, there's no way that the new Star Wars is going to outdo what this did at the box office.
No.
Like,
I don't think so.
That's where this franchise has gotten.
People were
Yeah.
really mute when the trailer for Rise of Skywalker came on.
I actually think Disney might be kind of worried about that.
I
right
think
now.
they should be.
Well, I mean,
It'll still
they
do
have their
good.
loyalists.
It'll
They're
still
going
do
to show up.
good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like the last week of what this has been, like Star Wars is in second place right now for
Yeah,
Disney.
if there's anything that Star Wars fans love, it's bitching about Star Wars. So there's
Yeah.
always going to be like a lot of them coming out to be part of the discourse.
I mean, the sad thing is, no one forces them to watch it.
Please continue, Anna.
Okay.
very proud of you.
Well, Infinity War Part 2 I thought was really...
Yeah. Fuck Marvel.
I thought was really, really good. I went into this spoiler free. Thank goodness. I liked that going into this movie was pretty much an event. I had to wait in line. My boyfriend and I, Tim, gotta give a shout out. So,
Hey, Tim.
hey. Also,
Hey, boo.
I'm gonna stop mid sentence to give a shout out to my friends Christina and Janice that I did not do for the Mary Poppins episode. So, hello. Yeah, mentioning them by name is important.
Christina is the person who's been on this show.
Yes, she has. She's been a previous guest.
Yeah.
She said, according to her Twitter, that she was in the theater after everybody left and was sobbing.
Yep. Yeah. No, I can attest to that. And then she cried more in her car too.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So that experience is the engulfing experience that I went through and many other people went through when watching this
Sounded
movie.
like she needed some of those Marvel PTSD counselors that they had at the Comic-Con.
Oh my god.
Oh god.
I remember that. That was fucking awful.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, so I
God damn it.
loved that this movie was an event and that I had to wait in line to get inside a theater, which I haven't done since seeing The Dark Knight at midnight, which was that was like an event at the time too. I loved the direction that this film took as a conclusion to this universe. I like that it didn't feel too long, although the first act and part of the second kind of felt like it was dragging. I liked, for the most part, where all the characters' stories went and all their arcs went. And I just loved this emotional roller coaster, and I've learned to love the directing style of the Russo brothers because my favorite movie in this entire universe is The Winter Soldier. So I think that the Russo brothers kind of taking on Infinity War and Endgame was a very, very smart choice. So I loved this a lot. Wasn't a huge fan of Thor and what his character became.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
I feel like most people weren't. But I did like all of the uses of the time heist, as confusing as that kind of was. I did really, really, really like the Ancient One. She was my favorite character in Doctor Strange.
She's
I
great.
think she is a powerhouse of a character, and I love Tilda Swinton.
Me too.
I actually think she was perfectly put into this film. Because I think the idea of if they would have had this film and not had her in it would have been actually kind of awkward thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Her whole scene is I'm not going to give you the time stone. It's why would
it only took 3 lines of dialogue to change your mind?
Then why would
Exactly.
why would Doctor Strange give the time stone? It's what the fuck did you just say? And I'm just he's obviously she trusts him enough to know, she hasn't even technically met him yet, but she knows who he's going to become.
Yeah.
And just to say that about him, that he's he represents the best of us, and it's and if he had a plan, if he saw something, then I can trust him. I was that was really cool.
I did think that was really cool.
There was something on somebody, I don't know, it was on Twitter or somebody, but I've not seen anybody write anything about this, but I am interested, asking why the fuck was she there? That it made no sense for her to be at that location.
Be in the city, yeah, that didn't make
sense.
sense.
At Doctor Strange's apartment before.
Yeah. No, at the Sanctum in New York, because her Sanctum was the one in wherever
Tibet or something.
Tibet.
Yeah,
That's
it made no sense that she was there because the plot said that she needed to be.
Exactly.
She was spying on Doctor Strange.
Yes,
and she was fighting the aliens. That actually does make sense.
Maybe she just went there on vacation for the Battle of New York, basically. It kind of.
That's her vacation.
She knew it was going to happen, so she knew she needed to be there. She has the time stone.
Anyway,
that's exactly
maybe she should
true.
have prevented it then.
I did also.
That's not a role.
okay. Yeah.
I did.
She's a woman.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Anna,
please continue.
No, you don't get the privilege to do that.
I did also appreciate it. Also, the scene with the Ancient One, that they kind of cleared the air on confusion of the time heist, et cetera, even though, time travel movies. But a plot hole that I did want to get off my chest that I didn't really appreciate about this movie. So when everyone is coming back from the time heist where they're collecting the stones, and it's past Nebula instead of present Nebula, nobody notices that Nebula just goes off and does her own thing with the time machine, and thus sparking the past Thanos army to enter this current timeline. Nobody noticed, and I didn't like that.
Yeah,
I mean, in fairness, they were at the moment where they thought that everything was being put back to normal. So I mean, they were a little preoccupied.
Yeah,
she stole her headpiece.
Right, and so there wasn't any indication that she looked different because headpiece. But anyway, that's just something that annoyed me. But anyway, I loved this movie. I cried like a baby the last half hour, all the way through the credits.
Did you stay for Iron Man's metal sound?
Yep.
That means that Iron Man's coming back.
The blacksmithing, yeah.
Wait, what?
Son of a bitch.
I heard that.
Did you stay for that?
No.
Okay, so
I heard that Robert Downey Jr. just requested that it be in there.
Oh, okay,
to
good.
End it on a Iron Man note.
Is that true, or are you making that up?
No, that's actually what I heard.
hope so, because I hope that's what it means.
So there was
it was a personal favor, basically.
To Toussaint, because you were not there for this. Yeah. There was no post-credit scene. But at the very end, during where they showed the Marvel logo, you hear a blacksmith hitting iron a few times, and that's it.
Which is the actual sound effect from the first movie.
I thought it would. I think that it would be really interesting if, however the course of these films going forward is, I would be interested to see another older actress playing Morgan, because seeing Morgan interact with her father, it was just she's got what Tony's got. She's smart. I'm looking forward to seeing what that character could do if she actually took up the mantle of her father, not necessarily being an Iron Man, but just
what about an Iron Woman?
Well, they already have that. Well, I'm just saying maybe she could be Ironheart, but then again, Ironheart already exists as a character who is black, so I'm just I don't know about that. I was let's do something else.
Oh, so it's okay for black people to take on white roles, but it's not okay for the opposite.
No. No.
Well.
No.
Alex.
My turn?
What are your thoughts?
Okay. I was a big fan. I enjoyed this probably about the same as Infinity War, although I think I do prefer this film. I give them the same rating.
I'm the opposite. I give them the same ratings, but I prefer Infinity War.
Okay. I'm looking forward, actually, to seeing this a second time. which is great because some of the previous Marvel efforts, even though I like them, I definitely will say that I feel like there is a bit of fatigue in the series to where I've been interested to see it for the first time, but don't really want to go back and see it again in the theater.
This is the first Marvel movie besides the Guardians movie, just because I find the soundtracks to be happening and hip, that I actually would not mind doing a return trip to the theater. So anyway.
And for a 3-hour film, that's something. I went to the bathroom about 2 hours in, and I thought it had not been 2 hours yet, so I was pleasantly surprised about that. So I thought the pacing here was actually not that bad. And for a 3-hour film, it really, I don't want to say didn't feel like it, because there were parts that dragged for sure. But at the same time, there was definitely enough here to fill the 3 hours, which I'm really happy about. Overall, I think this film did enough of the things I really wanted it to do to solidify its spot on the mantle of being the final film of this phase or collection of films, or the Infinity story or whatever. I mean, the idea that they were going to have all these characters in the same film and also cameo back in characters from previous films, and bring back previous storylines, close loops on different storylines.
Robert Redford.
Yeah, that was
Robert Redford.
That was a cameo that nobody needed.
Oh, but it was
Disney's
there.
got that come out of retirement money.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, and also that scene, we got Loki, which was cool and fun, non-speaking role, I thought.
And we got to see how he got away for his Disney Plus show.
Exactly.
So that's something.
That was honestly one of the best uses of Loki in
He's gonna
quite
have,
a few films.
He's going to have a
because
Disney
I'm
Plus
not
show.
a Loki.
Yeah, he's going to have his own Disney Plus show, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier are going to have their own Disney Plus show as well.
Here's the problem. Here. No, wait a second. Here's the thing, though, because I actually appreciated that, and I actually thought about that when I saw him go away. I'm like, oh, he's going away to be in his own television show. But at the same time, the Vision is also going to have his own television show, and his character did not get a conclusion here. So
Yeah, but if the Vision is who he is, he can be rebuilt.
Yeah.
that's true.
And
I'm just
also,
saying,
like, Jarvis, wasn't Jarvis, like, no, that wouldn't make any sense. Jarvis is based on a real person, but they wouldn't put the real person in a TV show.
Read
Okay, never mind.
Tom King's The Vision if you want to see how
Yeah.
yeah.
I've heard that it's a great
fantastic.
series, and I would like
to
to watch.
see the kind of eternal life that a character like Vision can
So
have.
I want to talk a little bit about the Falcon and why I hate him.
He was only in this movie for 10 minutes.
and
Tucson really does not like the black characters.
I really don't like the
Falcon
Falcon.
is Anthony Mackie.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really don't like the Falcon. I like Rhodes, like he's cool. I like T'Challa, he's cool. I think that the Falcon is the most useless fucking Avenger, and I wish he was actually one of the people that was permanently killed in Infinity War.
He's going to be Captain America now.
I mean,
yeah,
they're all
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
useless outside of the core.
Yeah, that pissed me off. Like I really enjoyed.
Yeah, because he didn't have, like, an interesting, useful storyline like the Winter Soldier.
No,
Literally, I mean,
No.
Drax didn't do anything in this movie, and
I-
yet he had a line that said he was going to kill Thanos with his bare hands.
Yeah,
so,
but he didn't.
That didn't get paid off.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
it should have been, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people have nothing to do with
Yeah,
this.
I felt like, why would you give? I know why the reason is, like, they were friends and shit like that, but they should have given it to Bucky. But Bucky just seems like he's tired most of the time, so I can see why
Sebastian
he
Stan
didn't.
does not wanna do this.
So I can see why he wouldn't want to be like next Captain America. But it's like, why did you have to give the shield to the most suck ass Avenger?
Because
it happens in the
Falcon
comics.
Sam was there when Steve had no one.
Yeah. He was on his left.
Yeah.
Man. I actually really enjoyed the old Captain America moment. I didn't have like flashbacks to like Saving Private Ryan where they age up
Matt Damon?
Yeah, Matt Damon. I thought that was really funny, but it's just like no, but it actually like really looked good, and it's just like
Yeah.
I was
He looked a little too much like Joe Biden.
I was
That's what everybody said, and I don't see it.
Really?
I was
I'm not
really,
saying I look at it and I'm just like,
Yeah.
they look nothing alike, but he just looked like an old white dude.
That's really funny.
I was really
As soon
I
as he
would
went
never
on
have
screen-
thought it without
Wow.
people
Yeah.
like
Okay.
memeing it and
Like the second after he went on screen, I'm like, oh shit, it's Joe Biden.
no, I mean you're not alone. Millions of people thought that.
oh shit.
He's traveling through time to try to get votes.
He's traveling through time in order to raise money from history's richest oligarchs.
How does he keep raising money?
Well, he used the time stone to go back in time in order to talk to the guy who liked to electrocute elephants in order to get rid of Nikola Tesla.
I will say, because of the way he sniffed Peggy Carter's hair at the end, I do kind of see the resemblance.
Oh, I'm sorry that she felt uncomfortable, but I don't think I did anything wrong. Oh, man. Oh, my God.
I will say, though, on a more not Joe Biden note.
Yeah, let's put that. Let's put that in a box and put it at the bottom of the ocean.
Anna, we were just biding our time.
God damn it.
So,
please continue.
So Steve got his happy life with Peggy, which just drove me to tears.
Sucks to suck for her husband.
I think that was her husband.
No, her husband's the Jarvis guy.
I think that was her her actual husband.
No.
What?
No. What are you talking about?
Whatever you're talking about, because I just don't remember which. I don't even need to. I just assume that the idea is that he changed history.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wouldn't really suck because he wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I was trying
What if
to
they have
say-
any children?
So-
What if they have any children that are living currently?
Like in real life?
Yeah.
Why
Well,
would that matter?
I don't think that she ever had children. I think that her descendant, the person that was
Oh,
watching.
you mean
Sharon?
Yeah, Sharon. I thought Sharon was
no.
Aunt. That was Aunt Peggy.
Oh, it was Aunt Peggy.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. She
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even consider the fact that Steve just kind of was
Steve
swooping.
didn't.
Maybe the super soldier
Steve only
serum
cares
made
about his
him
happiness.
made him sterile. I don't know.
Who knows? Anyway,
What's the difference? She's still not. It's fine.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that
Come on,
that
bro.
part in the movie where you see that he gets his happy ending, and
Right.
also fun fact, the music that they're dancing to is the same music that plays in Steve's apartment in
Winter Soldier.
it's either Winter Soldier or Age of Ultron, where Nick Fury breaks in his apartment. That's the
It's,
same music
Winter
on in
Soldier.
Yeah.
Winter Soldier's that's the same song that's on in his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve still has the same taste in music.
Yeah.
And then, while it didn't occur to me that this was his intent, when Steve goes back to 1970 with Tony Stark and he grabs those Pym particles, my train of thought was like, oh, okay, Steve's being nice and is grabbing those for everyone. No,
That's how they have to get back.
and really he was like grabbing those for himself so he could spend so much time with Peggy. No? What? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, they needed to get the Pym
They
particles.
need to get the Pym because
they
they
lost.
used what they had to go
Yeah.
further back in time.
but
Right.
I think he actually did. He might have actually grabbed extras.
Yeah.
For that intent. Yeah.
Yes, no, that was my train of
like
thought. Is
one
that
extra.
more of them were
Yeah.
for him,
Right, yeah.
Because once he saw her through the window, I was just like, oh my god, he's
Yeah.
so.
I was a little more off put by the fact that Peggy works for Hydra.
Peggy doesn't know that. I don't think.
Why do you think he
to be
went
fair,
back for her?
Yeah, but anyway, I loved that, and then I also love how Tony got to speak with his dad, one last time.
There is another example of just terrible use of de-aging by Marvel. Oh my god!
I gotta say
John
whole
Slaughter looks so bad.
Didn't look that.
was-
Didn't look like himself, but I mean, Michael Douglas didn't look that great either. But you didn't really see his whole face.
You know what he looked like? He looked like, and I hate to bring it back to the Future. He looked like old Marty in Back to the Future Part 2. Like, if only he had a second tie on, it would have really just completed the outfit.
Fly!
It was not good.
Fired!
Jesus Christ.
Remember when everyone was afraid of Japan taking over the world, and then the bubble burst? I remember.
Were you alive then?
No. I remember learning about that, and I was just like, "That's kind of weird." It's like, why was that in there? It's like, oh, because everybody's afraid of Japan taking over the world because they were buying up properties in America and automotive industry and shit. And then the bubble burst.
I was gonna say, I thought that only
1989.
Asian people could own technology companies.
No. That was
No, that wasn't it.
no.
Okay.
It was just a whole thing that was going on.
We
in the
clearly
80s.
have a different vibe going on then.
Yeah.
back to Endgame.
Yeah, back to Endgame. Back to the future.
Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'm having a good night. Sorry.
Yeah. I thought the Howard Stark thing was 50-50 because, on the one hand, that is a good idea for closure for Tony.
Oh, yeah.
But I definitely thought it was slightly weak in its scripting because I guess I felt like they put too big of a fine point on it, where I thought it would have been a slightly better if it was more of a passing moment with a few words exchanged between the two men. Like, for it to literally...
Linger on.
Yeah, linger on, and then culminate in a... he'll be proud of you or whatever. Like that, I just thought that was kind of like, I don't know. Like I just thought honestly that time back in that era and that location could have been better spent with Steve in some way following Peggy a little more. But because they really
like a creep,
pretty much. I mean, I thought that actually kind of could have been executed well enough to be romantic longing, but. But because they were really trying to save the idea, I think, for the ending as to be kind of a twist, they just did not want to show her outside of a very brief glimpse, as if that's all we were going to get. So I thought that because that entire thing, the emotional heft was rested on the John Slattery character, who has really not been a big part of this universe whatsoever, even if he's supposed to be a big part of Tony's life. I mean, he's in one film where he's actually kind of in it, and then
he's in Iron Man 2, which is pretty much unanimously the worst film.
Right. And then he's in another movie where he's killed off by Bucky.
Which is Civil War, yeah.
So, I mean, I just thought... I felt like Tony's arc in no way across these 22 films supported a father-daddy issue talk, and was much more about Tony himself and his future, that I just thought... I mean, I know the comics have always had the Stark lineage as like a proud thing and a wealth of, or I should say a well of dynamic to pull from, but these movies do not support
I suppose
that.
I feel like there is a lot throughout the entirety of the series. You could even go all the way back to the beginning of the very first Iron Man film, of Tony having a really poor relationship with his father, and the idea of him never being able to get closure on that. I mean, it's even played out in that ridiculous scene he has where they have the de-aging of him in Civil War, and he talks about how he never got the chance to talk with his father. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, and
yeah. That's why I say it's 50-50. Like, yeah. it does work for me theoretically. There was something about it that felt off in a way that I felt like even Stark would not have treated it like a lifetime moment.
I think that it just keeps coming back. Like, there's, I think, 3 different places where they're actually having conversations. Like, they're in...
That's what I mean. It's such a...
The lab, the elevator,
belabored,
and then outside on the base.
It's such a belabored thing
that
by the time they go for the fences, I was like, man, I really want to see what they're doing in New York. Like, it was just kind of... Whereas if they would have just went all in with one scene, which, A, would have made a lot more sense just due to time travel wonkiness, like if he only got a moment to speak with his father. But I was, like, expecting him to just, like, be like, oh, I'm going to get in the limo with you. I just want to make sure everything goes okay. Yeah. Like,
so, just putting a bow on my initial thoughts. Yes. I was a big fan. I think the interesting part of both these films is actually the same thing that we talked about previously for actually years on this podcast before we got to the Infinity Saga, which is that Thanos is basically a waste of time as a villain. And I thought that...
How can you say that?
I thought that
How can you say that about Grimace?
I thought they went...
How can you say that about his Jolly Rancher chin?
God damn.
Are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
Scratched by Wolverine.
I thought they went out of the way to have him not be in this movie.
Well, I think he's a shitty villain, so I was really happy about that.
I think most people do.
Yeah.
And he's definitely a big part of Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he was fine in that. But here, like, he is not in this movie. Like, he's in this... He might have, like, 9 minutes of screen time in a 3-hour film.
You mean you don't enjoy, like, him and his edgelord, like, plan to, like, bring balance to the universe by killing half of the people in the universe?
Well, that's not even his plan in this movie. That plan's over.
Yeah, and then and now he just, like... He's literally like, yeah, so long as people, like, remember what it used to be like, they're never going to appreciate what they have, and they're always going to rise up against me. So I just need to destroy the universe and then remake it in my image.
Here's
so
the thing.
That people will then treat me the way that I should be treated.
Here's the problem.
He's just a megalomaniac now.
I was going to say, here's the problem with Thanos, and here's the problem with the way that character was written in this film. For how everybody talks about throughout the entirety of Infinity War of how his entire life's work has been spent about killing half of the people on Earth, he makes a pretty quick leap to say, you know what, that doesn't sound like a good idea. I'm just going to genocide everybody.
Probably because he saw himself die, and he's like, oh, well.
Well, okay, I'll say this. I have always thought that Thanos was a very bad villain in these movies in general. I mean, from the very tease of him in the Avengers, right? He had like a line or something.
You see his face
right.
at the end of the Avengers, and then he has the terrible, I guess I'll do it myself, in the post-credit scene.
Then you've got the Guardians moment and whatever.
Just literally just laughing on his throne.
Yeah. Like, it's just been a horrible build-up. So by the time we got to Infinity War, I thought that was, wow... I thought it was still pretty laughable, even though I kind of like his plan as a foil for, instead of just being this kind of like, I want to take over the world, it was like this very weirdly unthought through plan of like, I'm just trying to help everybody else, and I'm the only one with the stones to do it.
Oh, he's the only one with the stones! That's so good!
And I gotta say, I actually thought this movie saved his characterization a little bit for two reasons, which is that A, I loved his opening stuff, the Thor beheading, the fact that
where did he get that T-shirt from? Like, where did he?
I actually thought that was pretty great because it made me understand his plan a little more. Because now that I got to see him, I know they showed it for a moment, but you didn't know if that was going to be just a Windows wallpaper or if that was going to be actually what he was going to live in and whatnot. But the fact that he's just going to chill in this realm by himself. It kind of did speak to me that, like, this guy literally doesn't need anybody but himself, and he really thought he was doing something for the rest of the world instead of for himself. And so I love that characterization, plus the very abrupt just killing of him. Because,
fantastic.
Because, from a character standpoint, it makes perfect sense because he genuinely thinks it's done. So he's not going to fight back. So that whole thing worked for me. Now, while I think it's a little wonky, I actually also thought that to bring him back into the fold. So the killing of him was great because besides the fact that it was wonderfully executed, it answered one of the big questions I had, which is how are they going to have a 3-hour movie where Thanos is still a villain? Well, you just get rid of him for a long time. Mm-hmm. Then when he comes back, actually I thought that was pretty great because he's literally seeing a cavalcade of superheroes trying to undo what he did. And so if that's the case, like if his plan, then he's just like, I guess I'll just have to go up to 100%. And so I just thought that and I'm not saying he's the greatest villain ever or whatever, but I thought this movie did a lot of kind of retcon work of actually making me find his plan and his whole demeanor just to be kind of tolerable.
I think that it's really, I guess, looking outside of even like the characterization of Thanos in these films, I've sort of like sensed the whole phenomenon of people reflexively trying to rehabilitate villains, like in the case of like Joker or something like that. They try to rehabilitate Thanos, like, oh, Thanos was right. It's like, I don't think it was such a bad thing after all. It's like, you do understand, like, trying to apply a blunt, simple answer to a complex problem is pretty much like one of the defining traits of fascism, right? Like, you're basically just saying that you're acquiescing to fascism, which I guess nowadays is just in vogue, so whatever. Just fucking cop to it, you fucking assholes.
Yeah, I was a big fan of this film. Yeah. I actually thought Fat Thor was actually pretty great.
I didn't.
Okay,
not a fan.
That's okay.
I'm pretty much with you guys in the sense that I thought it was hilarious in that opening scene.
I like Thor,
but I thought the moment. And I actually thought they had the perfect out, too, where they could have redid it. Where I thought that opening scene was fantastic, where, he's at his little hut with the rock dudes, he's fat. I thought it was great. It was kind of a pathos via humor type, like he's so far gone that he whatever. All they had to do, because they established it earlier on in the film, was take him to the time machine and do the same thing they did to Scott Lang at first, and de-age him like 1 year. He'd be back to muscular Thor. He gets to walk around and just be his own self.
I'm actually glad they didn't, though, because you know what? That would have been...
The problem is they can't not comment on it, and, like, I'm just, like, maybe it was the audience, but, like, if you saw him do something for the rest of the film, it was somehow always a punchline.
I don't know. I actually thought his scene with his mother actually was pretty fantastic.
I did like that, too.
That's
agree.
a great scene.
That
but
lesson was weird.
That doesn't have to do with him being fat, other than a few jokes.
No, but it is very interesting to have him come in contact with her when the last time that he saw her was like the height of he had gotten his, even though she was obviously had the ether inside her, he had gotten his girlfriend to Asgard, even though she wasn't supposed to go there. He was going to be ascending to the throne, and then his mother died. And then really, if you look at it, everything's been shit ever since then for Thor.
That was kind of that was all downhill from there. Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. That's the truth. I think that, like, my contention with it is that I feel like this film inadvertently conflated Thor's physical change with the effects of his PTSD, and that sort of
oversimplified.
That feels it's oversimplified, and that in the way that, like, you know, a fucking superhero movie oversimplifies shit, and it just felt gross in that sort of way. It's like I enjoyed watching Thor fight. I enjoyed watching Thor fight Thanos and stuff. Just to shows, like, you know, just because, like, he's put on weight doesn't make him any less formidable.
That's not really fair, because as soon as the fight started, he had the lightning come down and turn him back to normal size.
No, he wasn't normal size. Like, you actually look at him, his stomach is still there.
He's definitely smaller.
I mean, I think they just basically try to CGI it so that way, not CGI it, but just, like, hope no one really notices. But here's my thing, too. If after he was introduced as Fat Thor, and that's the thing, is I just didn't care for Fat Thor. Like, I liked his arc in this movie and all that, but if they would have at least at one point during a battle scene showed that maybe his new physique was not helping him in some way, like, why is the fatness only a prevalent thing in his life if it's a joke, but why does he still get to be Thor,
I guess,
but fat?
What, like,
I'm saying
is
just stupid.
It
was elementary.
The way that, how I've always thought of it, at least, is in terms of Thor, is basically he can, by having the lightning come down into it, he can turn into any form he really wants to be. This is just the way his... Like, he emotionally, he is super depressed, and he has just allowed himself to become this, even though he could go back to what he wants to be at any time.
Snap back the moment he's back in the game.
Because he doesn't want to until he's fighting. I don't have a great answer for it. All I'm saying is I actually didn't really...
Sounds like fat shaming to me. You choose to be fat.
I will say, and most people have been a big fan of it, I thought everything with Banner and Hulk was fantastic.
I like that.
I actually liked that too, especially since Banner, you know, went through a lot of things mentally throughout the series. And...
Well, and the idea, I think it's pretty fascinating, actually, the idea of him always struggling between the two personalities, and then just saying, like, you know what, I'll just be both. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Let's take photos and dab.
I thought the scene in the diner was just so good, and it seemed like everybody in the theater thought it was really great too.
My favorite Hulk scene actually is when they first get back to the first Avengers, and they see him, like, the old Hulk, just, like, beating the shit out of the car, and he's like oh, but then as they're, like, about to, like, go, oh, you got to get this out of your system, right? And he's like, okay, and he just goes and throws a couple of things. He's like, ugh.
He just hits the roof of a car.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was awesome.
That was great. I thought the diner scene, to be completely honest, because I'm a child, but Scott Lang saying, just give him the goddamn phone back in front of the children was just one of the great lines.
Yeah,
I thought so too. And then also, when I like how this was kind of like running throughout the movie, because it takes note the pop culture behind it. When Tony and Scott Lang are in the Avengers Tower, and they say, oh, Steve, that outfit isn't doing anything good for your ass. And then Scott Lang is like, that's America's ass as far as I'm concerned.
That is America's ass. Yeah.
And then when
that's the line of the movie.
It is. And then when Steve is fighting himself and he walks away and he goes, that is America's ass.
That is America's ass. Yeah.
They've earned that.
Yeah.
Steve's
They have.
Steve's Thick Daddy.
Steve's fight with himself was weird because I'm probably the only one in the theater, so I'm a bit of an idiot like this. But at first, I thought Loki had transformed into Captain America, so I was like,
No.
No, I figured that out.
I feel like that. I feel like that
In this
would be an
series,
okay
that's
mistake to
certainly,
make.
I mean, obviously,
Possible?
my first thing was, it's time travel, whatever. But as someone, or I should say, as this franchise has done that a million times, that could definitely be something.
But
Yeah.
when it using the idea of Bucky still being alive, but then also using the scepter to kind of like put him to sleep, I thought was fantastic. And I'll actually, I don't know anybody who's seen this who hasn't seen a majority of movies before, but I feel like if someone went in fresh, that scene would make no fucking sense
Absolutely
whatsoever.
not. No, absolutely not at all. But yeah, that's why I think this movie was a very good culmination from everything that's been established so far.
Also, want to give a shout out to the scene in which the Hulk gives Scott Lang some tacos.
That was great. What a delightful man.
Yeah.
After again, and what's his name? War Machine comes up and is just a huge asshole about it. Yeah.
It took a very corny joke as far as Scott, trying to eat food with the whatever, and then it just completely salvaged that entire moment with him just handing him 2 little tiny tacos. It's so great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I really liked Ant-Man in this movie.
It's great.
I loved him a lot. So
I am
funny.
very happy that people like Ant-Man now, because I think I was maybe one of the higher people on the first Ant-Man, which is not to say that I actually
think you still are.
Yeah, well, I still think that Paul Rudd's charming in anything he does, even if it's a bad movie.
Yeah.
So I'm just so excited that this franchise actually kept going with that, because I could also see them maybe being like,
Well, I think the character, much like Thor, has been on an upwards trajectory ever since the beginning, and I think all the other characters have not necessarily went down, but they're the 2 characters that throughout their films have clearly gotten better as time has went on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of the scene where Clint Barton was a Ronin, and
that was pretty cool.
Like, seriously, that's a pretty dark scene for a Marvel.
There's actually blood in it.
Yeah,
which was weird. I mean, in a good way.
And that's the guy from the Wolverine too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought when I saw him on the premiere night thing, he's like, I was like, I couldn't tell anybody that I was going to be in this film. So I thought he was actually going to be like a superhero character, and I'm just like, I was a little bit disappointed by that, but
So I want to give just an aside about Hawkeye, because I think this is just me being ahead of the game, but I want to see what you all gentlemen know. The very opening scene with Hawkeye and his family
was great.
Very awesome. I read that fun fact about Hawkeye after Infinity War came out. So going into Infinity War,
what fun fact
the fun fact was that Hawkeye's family got snapped, but not him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So seeing that as the opening scene, I was like, oh, I already knew this.
Actually, I didn't know that.
Okay.
I mean,
I assumed
the
that,
moment the scene started, I guess first I just thought, oh wow, he's gonna lose a daughter.
Yeah, I thought
and
he was
like,
lose
oh,
his daughter.
okay,
Yeah.
he's gonna lose the whole thing or whatever. But
Yeah.
And just to kind of go off of what we were talking about, the leftovers and what Nick mentioned, we talked about Infinity War when we talked about it last year. God, it would have been so much better if people didn't ash away and they just disappeared. That is such a better payoff, because him just turning around and them being gone and be like, what the fuck? That is just awesome.
because that's what happens in the leftovers.
And
is that
They just disappear. There's no effect.
If someone's pushing a cart, that cart is just then rolling, and there's just nothing there.
If you if you can see people ashing away, you have an idea that something happened.
Yeah.
But if you literally think they might just be it's so much more fucked up.
Yeah.
And it would have, I think, actually played way better.
And here it got the best of both worlds, because the entire reveal is just an instant whatever, and yet just before the cut to credits, you do see the very kind of settling Ash. It's kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Which I thought was good. I also actually quite enjoyed his little moment too, in his where he gets to test out the time travel thing, which I thought was a very broody, good.
He has to go back right before he sees her face.
Yep, which I thought was great.
Yeah. You, Nick. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
No, you go first.
I'm going to go into a little bit of a longer thing, but I think you'll enjoy talking about it.
Okay.
So I think I'll take this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I know me and Nick both did not care for a certain scene in this film, although I'm kind of unsure, and I'm pretty sure you probably enjoyed this, and in fact, I know you did, Anna.
Okay.
And that is the scene where they return to Boromir, I think it is. No, not Boromir. That's the guy from Lord of the Rings.
Boromir.
Boromir, to get the Soul Stone from the Red Skull. By the way, I think we were screwed over, by the way, because Marvel had a really big missed opportunity here where they had Captain America going and bringing the stones back, and I think it would have been super awkward to have the scene where he brings the Soul Stone back and gives it back to the Red Skull, and he's like, "Peace out, bitches." That'd have been super weird. Anyways,
yeah.
Anyways, that scene I thought was super odd because it was beat for beat the exact same. Even the music cues were the exact same from the scene with Thanos and Gamora in Infinity War, and I actually think that makes sense, because it just shows the inverse of that, of people who are not trying to find someone to kill to get the stone, but they are trying to fall on the sword, basically, to kill themselves so that the other person can live and have the stone. But the way that whole scene played out, I actually really liked, but at the same time, I just, it was so close to what the scene from Infinity War was that I need, even the lines of dialogue from the Red Skull literally sounded like they were the exact same, and it was. And
maybe they were. Maybe he's like an animatronic person at the beginning of every Disney ride.
Here's the thing, though, and this is, and Marvel doesn't deserve this, but they got it from me in terms of me thinking about it, because I thought, you know what, his lines of dialogue would be the exact same, because he's been waiting to deliver this speech for a long time, and this is what he's always going to say. Yeah. So, damn it.
I bet he's just thinking oh, you know what, I'm just going to improvise this. But then they just show up out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, fuck, script!
Literally, Marvel didn't pay that guy to come back, and they just replayed those lines.
No.
That's how it went.
You literally read my mind, because I was just about to bring up how what everyone's thoughts were on the Black Widow Hawkeye exchange of them getting the Soul Stone, because either way, heartbreaking.
Yes.
Didn't really expect Black Widow. Come on.
I was not a fan of Black Widow dying.
It makes much more sense that Hawkeye lives, though, because he has a family.
So Captain
Black
America
Widow
went back in time and gave back the
for
Soul
them being
Stone
friends?
after
No, I mean, it makes
Black
sense
Widow
if
is
you're going to
dead.
do a moral weighing of the scales.
So Toussaint actually had a very good point just
So
now.
Captain America just went back in time to give back the Soul Stone, and Black Widow is dead now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what you just said.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I'm just I know that she died to save all those people. I know it's to save half the universe. That's great. No, but it just seems kind of a waste to give back the Soul Stone after you've already sacrificed.
But you have to make sure that you don't undo an event that happens before the. I'm just saying that's
I know,
time travel 101.
I know,
actually, what I actually thought was going to happen was he was going to go through the time travel to go deliver all the stones back, and then when he was supposed to come back, it was going to be Black Widow, and he took her place.
Which that could have, but no, he needed to.
That would have been very creative, but I mean, Steve had to live
go
out
pegging.
his life.
And he also definitely had. There was something going on with him and Black Widow.
We also missed out on the encounter
For sure.
between Captain America meeting the Red Skull.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
That'd be cool.
I literally just said that, but that's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just not a fan of the Black Widow dying, not because I'm even that attached to the character, because I think she's been very underused by
She's got to be back.
franchise. Well, and I get that.
She'll have her own movie.
She'll have her
It'll
own
be a
movie.
prequel.
Which fine, but I felt like this movie, if it was going to kill her off, should have had her in it more. I'm sorry, but
I agree with you.
I'm a sucker for more traditional setup when it comes to death, and I just thought that was kind of Marvel's female problems in a nutshell, thinking that these flagship moments somehow make up for having an actual life leading up to them. And in my opinion, her dying was just as kind of lukewarm as the yes, Slay Queen moment that all of the women participate in toward the end of the battle.
Who run the world? Girls!
Same thing with and I'm not even that against the moment, but the Captain America showing up and just doing her business. Now, her makes sense because she's always been a disconnected person from Earth at large.
Yeah.
But that's a trend right there. None of the other male characters come close to that level of just peaks with not even valleys, but just plateaus of whatever. I will say I actually really enjoyed Nebula in this movie, even though I've read a lot of criticism about her characterization and her arc. If anything, I'm sorry, but it's slightly more interesting, like what I just said, than what Marvel has been doing with a lot of the female characters to begin with. So maybe I'm just kind of taking it for granted because there was an actual story there. But the idea that in this movie, Nebula and Gamora are in basically reverse roles, in which Nebula is trying to get Gamora to see the light and save her in a way that Gamora basically did for her, in this kind of never-ending cycle of actual kinship and sisterhood. It's just not something I thought we would have gotten from the moment they first landed on screen back in Guardians of the Galaxy. And I actually thought that was brilliant. And not only that, but that it sets up a future now, or I should say the present timeline, in which Gamora is kind of now the Nebula character, and vice versa, because Gamora is in no way...
Are they gone?
No, I thought they were...
No, at the very end, Star-Lord has Gamora's face on the screen with a searching function.
But they can't find her.
Right. It's just the idea she's going to go off.
That's probably going to be the plot of Volume 3.
It'll be more of a walkabout type thing, like kind of soul-searching.
But I don't know the answer to this. Were they killed off on Tony Stark's snap, though, since they were part of Thanos' team?
No, I don't think
part
so.
Of Thanos' team.
No.
Because Nebula...
She wasn't technically part of the team.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
He probably snapped his fingers in order to, like...
I think he mostly got
disappear everybody that was attacking
Right,
Earth
I don't
at
think
that time.
he-
And
Yeah.
Gamora's
I
not
understand
attacking.
that.
I think it's more of a mental exercise, not anyone attached.
I don't remember Nebula being with the Guardians at the end. That's the only reason I'm saying that.
I thought she was in the ship. But maybe.
No, she was in the
I
ship.
thought she was.
Then there you go.
And then the scene between her and Peter, which I thought was great.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and I think that's going to be her characterization in the net, which is that she's very much alive, but she obviously has no affection whatsoever for this makeshift family.
Are you telling me that, like, this is the guy? It was like, yeah, it was kind of a choice between him and Tree. So,
Yeah.
you know, like...
So,
Also, too, the idea of Gamora's character, I actually completely agree with you, Nick, because the idea of her character basically being Jan Brady throughout the entirety of the Guardians of the Galaxy series, and then pretty much deciding to kill herself, and that's how she's going to save everybody else, is pretty. It's pretty deep for Marvel, because they don't really go very far, as Toussaint has alluded to earlier on the episode, in terms of storylines and arcs and everything like that. Like, they don't really go for things like that.
No, they don't.
So that was good. We could talk about everything involving Iron Man at the end of this film, which I think actually is really the only way this whole story could have ended, although I think that it could have been a little bit of a different presentation. But at the same time, Iron Man being the reason why everybody dies, and also pretty much sacrificing himself for the greater good, is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Shows a complete story arc from the very beginning of the MCU until the point that we arrived at, of him not giving a shit about anybody else other than himself, and also making weapons that kill people, and then using this makeshift weapon to save people by killing all the bad people.
I just feel like he keeps on, like, learning this lesson over and over and over again. And just
He doesn't learn any lessons throughout the entirety of the MCU.
That's what I'm saying. Is like he's meant to, like, learn this lesson at the end of a film, and then, like, it just is
but
a
think
hard
about it this
reboot.
way: he doesn't. It's not just that he finally learned the lesson, but he kind of realizes maybe he's the reason why he's not learning the lesson. So that's why I just thought it was like an ultimate good capper, because if you don't learn it without backing up your words,
Yeah.
and I just don't think he would have did that 22 films ago, and I feel like he's done enough shit since then, including the events of Iron Man 3, where he suffers from the PTSD and whatnot.
But even in that film, he continuously just tries to throw his own creations at things, and it's like, look, I saved the world by creating the Iron Legion, and it's like, you just keep doing the same things over and over.
But I just thought this was actually, it made perfect sense, because while I mean, you're going to have that with any character in these movies, because there's only one. I mean, technically speaking, Captain is always just a morally upright person trying to
navigate a murky and morally ambiguous world.
This is kind of no different, because in a sense, when he goes back, and I think the idea of him going back to Peggy was him making a very un-Captain-like choice and finally making a Steve Rogers choice.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's what I mean about the kind of complementary dovetailing of Iron Man and Captain. So I don't know. I'm completely with the idea. I'm not saying it was like a great moment or it was amazingly executed, but the idea right there is sound. It's the him basically kind of saying maybe the greater good, as Alex alluded to, is a world without an Iron Man, or at least a Tony Stark. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that is objectively true, but the idea that he's even considering that and then chooses it is a powerful statement in and of itself.
Yeah. Okay.
I loved the scene at the end where it was Tony making his sacrifice. That made me really sad.
Yeah. I love the part where Spider-Man could not get out of the way and he had to be pushed aside so that his fucking wife could have her last words with her husband.
To be fair,
yeah,
if
true.
I was Spider-Man, I would not have any fucking clue that his wife would just be there.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm just saying, I actually, when she walked in, I'm like, Pepper Potts is here? I completely missed that. I know they did show her, but I didn't know that was
the last one that speaks with Tony.
No, but she was
I know
wearing
that's
one of
what
the Iron Man
people
suits.
that's what people whooped at, but I didn't see that I didn't realize that was Gwyneth Paltrow until I thought back on it because I mean with those kind of suits and shit you see a face and I actually thought that was stupidly the Wasp.
Okay.
Oh,
not the Janet.
Michelle Pfeiffer's
Yes,
character?
I thought that was her in some weird
gotcha.
mecha suit at first, just because I was just thinking of whatever, and I've never seen Pepper Potts. Has she ever been in a suit before?
She was in Iron Man 3,
Was she? Okay.
momentarily, but she did not fight in
Right.
a suit. Yeah.
So anyway, that's just what I assumed it was until I saw her walk on that, and I realized, okay, that was her or whatever. But to be fair, I think the moment in Infinity War between Peter Parker and Tony is a lot more genuinely heartfelt than pretty much any moment that Pepper and Tony has spent together. Their romance is
I agree with
not
you.
a thing that I care about particularly. So the fact that Spider-Man got to do the inverse of what Tony was basically failed to do because he doesn't comfort him
The
at
most
all.
involved their relationship is in Iron Man 3.
Right.
And
that was 10 films ago?
And it's weird. Iron Man 3 is weird because he kind of has Happy Hogan go after her when he thinks she might be having sex with somebody else, and yet he's been fucking doing that forever.
And
so...
she doesn't show back up in his life or the audience's life until Infinity War. I mean, I know she shows up in Homecoming for whatever, but in general, we don't... So the idea that I'm supposed to... I
there's this weird story arc in Civil War 2 where she's left and then he doesn't. Yeah, that was
that
bad.
felt like maybe Gwyneth wasn't going to come back. So
I think they thought that.
Right.
I wish there was a moment in Endgame, after Tony passes away, where she just turns to Morgan and is like, "Don't worry, Morgan. We're going to be taken care of. Stark Industries, he set out a little nest egg for you, and we're going to make tons of money off of goop.
Set out a little nest egg for you.
We're going to make tons of money off of goop.
He left you $10,000.
Yeah.
You're totally fine.
Even Happy and Morgan's scene
what a
was
great moment.
better
That was
than
fantastic.
anything, in my opinion, that Pepper Potts
that
had.
cheeseburger is
I know.
referenced
That
too
was
from
the-
the
from
first
the
That's
first
such a small thing, and I'm just
It was
I'm gonna
great.
get you.
Come on.
I'm gonna give you as many cheeseburgers as
Clearly,
you want.
Jon Favreau's had no problem finding cheeseburgers between them.
Oh my god.
Oh shit!
He has put on a lot of weight over the years.
Oh my god.
He really has.
It's called that Lion King weight.
I do want to say, though, with that end fight, I was so prepared for Captain Marvel to straight up defeat Thanos. And when it wasn't her and Tony instead, I was like, what the heck, man? But she destroyed, the main ship.
I mean,
so.
yeah, that was pretty much like a do or die moment in the sense that
Yeah.
without her, whereas without a lot of these characters, that battle could have still been won.
It was like
but,
when Thor showed up in Infinity
Yeah.
War. They were fucked until they showed up, and then it was an even playing field.
Yeah. But basically, I was just happy that, Captain Marvel showed up at the end, but she was only in the movie for a total of, I think what I found online was 15 minutes. And I was like, ugh.
Even that sounds high.
Come on.
Because she was the last film, that doesn't really bother me.
I mean, that was kind of, especially after Black Panther was such a big deal, and he was barely in either of these films.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially.
Yeah, yeah, that was. Okay, let's talk about.
But Black
something.
Panther also had a pretty big role-ish in Civil War. So,
That's true.
Yeah.
Just as far as like Captain Marvel actually hasn't even really had anything outside of her own.
But she
movie.
just had her first film, so.
That's what I mean, though. But outside of that, like he had a storyline before his movie even got to start.
Let's talk about this, and I had thoughts about this,
Okay.
and that is, and we talked about this last year when we talked about Infinity War, but who are these people who did not think that the characters were coming back?
I think they do think that, but they are just
Playing it up.
yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying in the sense that like how do
there
you
were people when Black Panther showed
but that
back
is such
up,
in my opinion, voluntary reaction, not a involuntary.
it was
whoopee.
loud.
Oh yeah.
Really?
And yes, the people in our theater were
And
like,
here's how you
"Oh!"
know though. Here's how you know. Because then they kept doing it
Yeah.
for every establishing shot of every person that walked through a portal.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time a fucking Drax walks through as like,
A
50
Drax.
I'm just saying
You make him sound like he's a character from a Dr. Seuss novel.
but
In a
he's
way,
like
he
the
kind of is.
yeah. But he's the 50th person to show up through one of these, and people are it's just kind of that's what I agree with Toussaint in that I actually in this entire movie I think it's the first time I've had a Marvel fanboy moment where I kind of was like, "Ooh, I felt that moment," which was the Captain picking up the hammer.
Yeah.
So when my theater did cheer for that, like I totally understood that because that's a moment, you can't take that back, you can't whatever. It happens and it goes with it. Whereas the portal thing, I was like, no, nope.
Yeah.
There were
Wax on, wax off.
and it's hard because it's not that I don't understand it at all, because I do understand that people were very emotional about the last 20 minutes of this film, as you were alluding to, Anna. But
He's going to call you a baby right now.
Well,
That
I
was-
mean, in my defense, I did a full face of makeup and I cried for half an hour and none of it came off. So
Well, that's
That's
a
skill.
feat among itself.
That's
Thank
skill.
you.
That's a superpower.
Wait, does that mean you're really good at makeup or you're really good at crying?
both.
I don't know. I just felt like during right after the Tony Stark thing, right after Tony Stark dies, I mean, there were like people, like you could hear like a good majority of the theater blowing their nose and be like,
It was like Princess Di's funeral.
I was gonna,
Wow.
Oh my God.
no, that's,
Oh, no.
I was gonna say it. Oh boy.
You can't say anything to that.
No, I mean, that's it.
Thousand Starks in the wind.
No, but I'm. That part was not. I mean, it was understandable, but at the same time, I thought it was a little overblown at that early part of it, not up until the very end of the film, which is much more emotional in my opinion. But then, I want to go back to a whole nother aspect of it, which is that this is just another example of people in the theater having no fucking idea how to act in a movie theater anymore. And it is becoming abundantly clear that we're not going to be changing that.
Yep.
That as time goes on, people are not going to get better. They're only going to get worse. And it's fucking a terrible realization to come to. And like my wife said, maybe it's okay the movie theaters go away in terms of mainstream, because
No.
maybe we should watch
No.
movies at home.
No.
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 No, why? Because I have to listen to some woman have a fucking full conversation on her phone during the movie sitting right by
Oh,
me?
yeah.
Yes, because
Oh,
if
God.
that allows me to go see other indie and foreign films in repertoire theaters, because those will not be able to exist without these.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll take that every day.
You gotta take the bad with the good.
Who are we if we do not want this at all costs?
No,
Yeah.
I
Thanos.
Like you gotta tolerate. You can make
every fucking time
you really-
I go into a theater with reserved seating,
Yeah.
somebody has to be in my seat.
I agree, and it pisses me off to no end. And,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I will take the pain and the agony. I mean,
Yeah.
it's.
I
you
will
know,
too. It's just I'm just hitting the point.
Look,
where
if
I'm
somebody
just being
was-
very frustrated,
If somebody was talking during like Infinity War, I'm sorry that I kind of expect that from like a more of a populist fare, sort of like superhero film, that somebody's going to show their ass during like a really like big event film, like, oh, so I'm just going to the film because it's here and other stuff like that. But if they were doing,
person in front of me was on the phone,
if they were
at least a good, we had that one person who phone rang multiple times.
Yeah,
I mean, it's once is like, whoa, 4 times it's like
walk the fuck out.
You're not going to answer that.
Yeah.
What if that's your mom? And like, I mean, just like, I don't know. Just emergencies happen, man.
In my theater, there was a baby.
That's worse.
I hate that shit.
That was like basically it just was not a good thing for anybody because I was like, I just hope that baby's okay.
I kicked a baby out of
Yeah.
a theater
Yeah.
on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
When I took my mom to go see the Seth Rogen comedy Neighbors.
Yeah.
And it was Mother's Day, and it was a full theater too, so we weren't the only ones who were pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
But because I had worked at that theater previously and I knew people there, it was
yeah.
just not a problem for me to literally just walk out of the theater and be like, "Hey, there's a fucking baby
In my theater.
in that rated R movie in which children are not allowed over." Anyway, so the usher came up and like, "Man," because that baby would not shut up.
Yeah, but would not shut up.
With that person, here's the greatest thing though. So it was a young couple who clearly had a newborn. They really wanted to obviously go out for Mother's Day. Sorry, but you don't get to do that if you have an infant. Now, the usher came and talked to them and said, like, you do need to take the baby out because he's not being quiet, whatever. The mom, the young woman, basically apparently was totally fine with the dad just taking that baby out so she could sit and watch the rest of Neighbors, which I was like, damn, that's cold-hearted, because if you need a Mother's Day out that bad, then why did you even bring the child in the first place?
Yeah.
And also, you know, I could see if it was like Schindler's List or something. Like, I got to see how this ends. But Neighbors, I don't know.
In my theater, though, what I think was happening is that this baby was sleeping and then it was crying when it got woken up, and that happened a couple times. But at the same time, I was like, man, I hope that baby's okay. And
I know you feel bad for the baby.
Why?
No, I said you feel bad for the baby.
Exactly, yeah, because, I mean, what's going on
this.
screen is loud and disturbing to them, so...
I agree.
They wanted to watch Lorax, not
Yeah.
Neighbors.
And if you're going to do that, too, I don't know when you went, but, like...
Saturday.
Okay, so exactly.
You
really want to bring an infant to and you want to try it, you bring them to a weird screening time, whatever. You don't go either opening weekend, you don't go Mother's Day when you know that people are bringing their people out. I'm just saying, like, you just don't do that.
People don't give a shit.
No, they don't. But, like, even the person that vaped in front of me in Zootopia, at least that's a funny story because that was 9:30 on a Tuesday night. And even if it did piss me off, like, I understand the stupidity that goes into making that decision because I was the only person in the theater. I just also happen to be a pretentious film snob. So it's just, I don't know.
Happened to be as if there were another outcome for Nick Cheney.
Pretty much.
For Nick Cheney.
That's right. Even his wife was like, damn, can you go sit down over there? Because I kind of coughed, basically. And so he, like, literally just, like, the child and the mom stayed where they were in the middle, but then he just went all the way to the end just so he could vape, which is fine with me. Just don't, like, it's a empty theater and you sat in front of me, the row in front of me, so you can blow smoke.
That actually happened
Catch these clouds, bruh.
to me and my family when we saw Prometheus, but like we like it wasn't a person vaping; it was just us few,
Just
and then,
chain smoking.
and then like a few people. The only other people in the theater sat right in front of us, and we were like, "What the fork?"
Yeah.
Like,
I just like that you went to see Prometheus with your family.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
I will admit, because of what happened that night.
Nobody would run in a straight line. What the fuck? Let's go talk about this at Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
But I will
It's a
say,
Christmas movie.
It's never happened to me again as far as the story of Zootopia, because I did get proactive and I did go out and buy a vape whistle. I don't want people to be able to invade my personal space like that.
I feel like the next movie you're gonna see, someone's gonna vape in the theater in front of you again, and it'll just be the luck of the draw.
I think that was... I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. I think you just made fun of rape whistles.
No.
I made fun of whistles. Okay.
Wow.
I'm okay with it.
Wow.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay, really quick before we get
I
to
would
final-
rather not live in a world in which rape whistles could even be made fun of because of their existence in and of
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I make fun of whistles.
Okay. Before we get to final ratings, one thing that I will say is that at least we got the earlier scene where Thor got to behead Thanos, because that was awesome and was a very cool scene to have. But I felt like even though thematically it very much made sense just to have the inverse of what happened at the end of Infinity War, I felt myself as a fan and as somebody who likes very abrupt closure to villains, I felt myself feeling that the ending of this film was a bit anticlimactic.
I can see that. It weighs its portal entrances, battle, whatever, way too heavily as being more important than any sense of coherence and whatnot. I'll say this about the climactic battle. The reason why that scene works as well as it does, and then also doesn't work at all, is because it goes all in on, in no way staging a battle, but only staging moments to just play one after the other until it is time to then show the moment in which Tony does a sacrifice. But as a showcase of editing and whatever, none of it makes any sense as to how this battle is starting and stopping for any of this shit to happen, just so that these characters can have their moments and whatnot. I mean, each moment in and of itself is individually cool and thought through as far as like, oh, this character would do that. But it is unwieldy and just. I think that's why it's anticlimactic, because it's bloated by the time it even arrives.
I think the ending is more anticlimactic to me. Just like
everything after the battle?
No. Everything that after the snap, that everything about that is just like, oh, okay, well, this is done. I guess we don't have to worry about this anymore. Like, I seriously wanted someone to have to kill Thanos, and that's what I was hoping for. And I mean, I guess
but he
Iron
was
Man
undone by his own.
I know, I understand that, and that's why ultimately, like,
you got the best of both worlds. You got literally the beheading.
I did. That's what I'm saying. I'm not. It's not like I'm like furious or something like that, or thinking that it's like this horrible sin that was ruined the film for me or something like that. But at the same time, I was like, oh man, I wanted everything.
No, and I totally get that. I think thematically what's interesting about the idea of that, even if it wasn't executed amazingly, is that it's kind of cool that superheroes were literally only trying to work together to undo a mistake and not to kill. Like, as much as that's what usually it comes down to, like, and that's fine, but this felt like a weirdly kind of throwback to people banding together for the greater good, not the, let's kill this son of a bitch. Let's all agree to commit a murder so that other murders don't happen.
Yeah.
Yes!
It's pretty much what it was, though.
So.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't. I just meant that thematically it's kind of more interesting that it's the snap and the timeline, and I don't know.
They'll all be fucked if they don't kill him.
Right. Yeah. I just meant it wasn't as bloodlusty as some superhero villain fights are, where it's like
General Zod.
Right, like where it's like, it's like the kill shot is why you came, and it's like, well, I mean, I don't know that they're happy that they're doing this.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. If you're in a Zack Snyder movie, you're doing that, and then you're sobbing about it 2 minutes later.
So who's ready for some final ratings?
I am.
Okay.
Me. Do you want to start first, or do you
Okay. We'll go back around the opposite way.
Yeah.
The opposite way.
Yeah.
So
we'll go back to the future.
Okay.
Die Hard.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah, damn it. I was a big fan. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I feel like there's a chance I could give it a slightly higher rating upon seeing it again. So I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing it this weekend for a second time. But at the same time, I thought that this really delivered, and it being a final film of a series, especially a series that had this large of a scope as it did, this really landed. And if you compare it to other ending entries into things like Return of the Jedi, or I can't even think of the third Pirates of the Caribbean, not Dead Man's Chest,
at
but
World's
at World's End.
You should know that.
I know, that's one of my favorite series ever. A lot of those just got to their final entry and just completely shit the bed. And this not only did not fail, but also excelled in a lot of areas, all while doing it with all these characters and bringing them back and having their characters have purpose, and bringing back characters from previous entries that were previously either killed off or just not existent anymore. And also brought closure to the two main characters throughout the entirety of this series, which are Captain America and Iron Man. So this really, and it also hits so many different emotions throughout, even if I did not cry or sob or anything like that. I understand why people did, because I did really feel sad throughout the ending of this film and throughout other parts of this film. And this film is also actually pretty hilarious throughout parts of it. And there is fantastic action throughout. Like, this really does check a lot of boxes in a good way. And I just had a good time at the movie theater seeing this. I think that at the end of the day, that's probably the most important aspect of this film, is that this was just a fun film and just another super high quality entrance from Marvel into their cinematic universe. And I think that's probably the most important thing out of all of this, is that Iron Man started this series, 11 years ago or whatever it was. And going back this past weekend and watching The Incredible Hulk and watching the first Thor and seeing those films that were both, Hulk was Universal and Paramount distributed the first Thor, and seeing where it's come, and I'm not saying that it's a great thing that Disney has all the eggs in their basket and they dominate the world and they're collecting all the billions and all that shit. But at the same time, just seeing where the series has went from start to finish and where we've come technology-wise, where we've come with, story beat-wise throughout the series, this has established a very strict method throughout, but at the same time, it has established a very successful financial and also storytelling-wise method. And it has really had to develop that over time. And it just completely paid off, I thought, in this final film. And even though it has its faults, and I don't think this will ever be a perfect film because there are things about it that I just wasn't that crazy about, especially some of the structure and also some of the timing, even though I thought the length was okay, but it just kind of had a hard time keeping even keel throughout.
It's hard to justify a 3-hour film when you've had 21 films leading up to this. Like,
That's
no matter
true.
how epic this can be, it's also kind of like...
You couldn't have used any of that prior time to, like...
So I just think that's where some of its kind of imperfect faults come.
Yeah.
Just
I
kind
can see
of...
that.
Yeah.
But this was fun, and it was a good time at the theater, and I enjoyed seeing it, and I also was sad to see my favorite superheroes go, even if they'll be back in some form. At the same time, this really accomplished a lot of what Marvel was setting out to do, and I think it did it pretty spectacularly. So it's a 4 out of 5 for me for Avengers Endgame.
You were so overwhelmed by how much you enjoyed this experience that you ran out of the movie theater without the rest of us in your group.
That's true. I was not feeling well last week, so I went to go use the bathroom. So
I got so
thank you for
confused
that.
for a moment when that happened because I thought you were
The
actually...
last person in the world who would leave
Well, yeah.
as the credits are starting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, they were sitting, because it was me, Alex's wife, and then our friends Kenny and Jenny.
Yep.
Old co-host Kenny and his wife Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you left, and I didn't hear any conversation, whatever, I was about to go with you, but then I'm no one else is moving. So then I just sat there for a moment, and then they started talking about whether there was a post-credit scene. So then I chimed in and said, no, there definitely isn't. And then we got lost, and there was a back entrance
Just
to
got lost
this.
leaving the movie theater.
Yeah, there was a back entrance to this theater that we were in.
Yeah.
That took you to the upstairs because we were so high up in the theater. Yeah. Getting high on our own supply. So we went out the back door of this theater, And we found ourselves literally looking over the actual lobby, and we were like, oh, wow, this is weird. And then we went through an exit, and that was a fire exit, and it was a very big ordeal.
Cantera used to be a majestic movie theater.
Yeah.
When it first opened, they had 30 screens there, and they had those theaters, since they've taken out a bunch of the seats because they've put in the reclining seats, and they have a much smaller seat count in their theater. Those 4 theaters in the middle area, in which we were in one of them, were fucking massive, and the idea of how many people were in them, hundreds and hundreds of people in those theaters.
But
it would literally be faster to go out the top and then go down the stairs. And now, you just never would think that.
And another note about those theaters, the 4 big ones, they're too big for reclining seating.
Yeah.
Because we were up in the top row, which I don't usually mind. But not only are we up in the top row, the theater itself literally opens up on the left and the right. Instead of being a rectangle or straight line as far as these are the walls, it's just kind of almost like a stadium, just keeps kind of curving around just so you can keep adding a few more seats or whatever. And the partitions in front of the goddamn leather reclining seats are so tall that, yes, a short person like myself has to sit up just to make sure that I can see over a freaking brick wall that's in front of me. It makes no sense whatsoever.
It's a poorly designed movie theater.
Anyway, fuck you, Cantera in Warrenville, Illinois. Anna, what were your thoughts on this movie?
My thoughts on this movie, my final rating is 4.5 stars out of 5.
Woo!
Because I...
4.5 stars, did you say?
Oh. 4.5.
The North will remember that.
4.5 Stark Industries out of 5.
Ooh, fun.
I loved this movie, bouncing off of a lot of what Alex has said and what everyone has pretty much said so far. I think it was a great conclusion to this long saga that has been with us for the past 11 years. I think a movie that can really get at your emotions, a la Disney. Thank you. I am a slave to you, unfortunately.
Oh boy, you're saying that 10 years too early. You're saying that 10 years too early.
Am I?
Brittany said it first.
I know, she did. So I mean, she was a Musketeer. So I mean,
true.
Anyway, Team Brittany. So I just am so happy with how this turned out, even the unexpected things, such as the death of Black Widow. I am just, excuse me, I'm at a loss for words.
Oh.
I am so happy with everything. I'm happy that Captain America got his happy ending. I'm glad that everyone came back for a final fight. I'm glad that all of the characters, we saw them grow and change to be what they ended up being, and what us as an audience saw them grow to be. And I am really just so happy that I saw this in theaters, and I think any movie that can shamelessly make me cry in my seat is very good.
Can I say really quickly, just to cut in, I have to go on the exact opposite of what Toussaint said. I am super pumped to see what Captain America is going to look like with Sam Wilson playing him, because the idea of Captain America being able to fly, I don't know, there's something about that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Don't roll your eyes at me.
I have nothing against Falcon as a character. I just don't like Anthony Mackie's portrayal of Falcon. I just think he's boring.
Maybe they'll replace him with Terrence. What's his
Don
name?
Cheadle?
No.
Terrence Howard?
Maybe
Ew.
they will.
He's
Maybe
coming
they
back.
will replace him with Don Cheadle, and Don Cheadle will be like
He'll play that character,
Don Cheadle's
though.
War Machine will walk up to Falcon and he'll be like, "Hey, Falcon." And he'll be like, "Look, I'm here. It's happening. Let's just do this, okay?" Just like what happened in Iron Man 2.
But then War Machine takes his mask off. You see that now that's Terrence Howard. And like we just said, what's his name? Don Cheadle is now Captain America. And then all of a sudden they're like, "Iron Man, you're still alive?" And then Christopher Plummer rises. And he's like, "I'm back, bitches."
Yeah.
Bouncing off of that really quickly, apparently the Falcon Winter Soldier show is like Falcon and Winter Soldier in the comic universe each take turns at one point being Captain America, so it's going to switch off between the two of them. So that'll be really cool.
Oh,
yeah. So,
You hate Disney so much.
yeah, I do. I really do. I'm so over them. I'm so
You're
over.
just like trying to be that nice father who hears something detestable. He was like, "Oh, neat."
Yeah. Oh, let me get my pipe.
You know the whole, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all,
exactly.
right?
I
went through a wormhole really quickly on Letterboxd because I found Sean Baker, the director of the Florida projects, and Tangerine. He has a Letterboxd profile that a lot of people follow and whatnot. And he always has, so it's very interesting because he seems like such a wholesome boy. Because like every time he writes a review, it's always like, I can't believe this guy was able to get these shot. Like he's just such a fanboy, whatever. And I'm talking like every review is like that, whatever. And then all of a sudden I saw he did a review for the movie that me and Alex watched recently, The Standoff at Sparrow Creek, and his review was like one sentence, and it was like, saw this at the whatever theater, period. And then, hold on. And then in the comments, someone was like, so what did you think? And he's like, yeah, not for me. And I just thought, like, oh my God, this is just the most wholesome thing ever. He's just like such a genuinely nice person that he's just trying not to be, whereas I'm just a dick. Anyway, it's just rare to see in a director.
Yeah.
Literally said nothing at all.
Saw this at the theater.
Yeah, like that's his little letterbox entry. So anyway.
But yeah, my final thoughts: 4 out of 5. Loved this movie.
4 or 4.5.
I'm sorry, 4.5 out of 5. Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Stick
in my mind,
to it.
Yes, in my mind, I was picturing 4.5, but it came out incorrectly. But yeah, I loved this, and even though I preferred Infinity War, I still loved this very much, and I'm glad it was like the purple bow on the box that we got. Toussaint?
So my rating for this film is a 3 out of 5. I thought this film was good. I did not think it was spectacular. Was it better than Infinity War? In my opinion, I think it was. Like, I actually gave a shit about this a little bit more than... Well, actually, that's not true. I think I cared about Infinity War more because I wanted to see who would die, and then it turned out none of those deaths really fucking mattered. A lot of them got walked back. A lot of them were just like sort of like third-tier characters. And this one I actually cared about these characters as well, too, because I got to see some principal characters die. And, like, I don't know. I like permanent consequences and people actually grappling with that and, like, sort of like moving past it. And so that's why I really enjoyed about the first half of this. Like, I liked... Even though it wasn't permanent, they didn't know it wasn't going to be.
Although the permanent deaths that weren't even from the snap are even coming back.
Yeah.
Except for Heimdall, nobody wants Idris Elba anymore.
Oh, I like Idris Elba.
I know you do,
but I know
he talks shit about the series and then they killed him.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, but at least he got his last like send off thing where he got to like send Hulk back to Earth through the Rainbow Bridge, Rainbow Road Bridge.
That was a giant mistake.
Yeah, I know it was a giant mistake. That's okay. But I'm not moved to any sort of like especially passionate feelings about this film. I mean, the Captain America moment was really good. It really that was the one point where I was like, fuck yeah. It's like yes, and that really affected me, and I really enjoyed that. The ending with Captain America, I really enjoyed that as well too. Iron Man dying, I was surprised by that, and I'm just like, okay, I like that too. First half is the best half. Second half is a little bit over bloated for my taste. I mean, it's hard for me to be moved to any sort of effusive praise for this film just because it feels like it's very much in keeping with what I've come to expect from the 21 other films that have come before this. And if anything, it just sort of doubles down and if they haven't found a way to refine this shit to get it to the point now where it is in this, I'd be really fucking concerned that they've had 21 fucking films in order to finally get this right. And they did get it right. I think they did a substantial enough job. I just don't think that it is one of the greatest films of all time, or let alone the cinematic like event of the decade or whatever. It's like, I think, yeah, that's something that's said by people who only go to see Marvel and Star Wars films in theater. So.
Well, and I'll say this really quickly. It in one way, it is the quote-unquote cinematic event of our time, in so much as it represents the things that people apparently care about.
Yeah, sure.
When it comes to this genre and this faux version of storytelling in
I don't
want
to see any goddamn list in 2020 talking about the best films of the 2010s, and I don't want to see this shit anywhere near on that list, okay? There are so many other films that deserve to be on inclusion with that list. I just feel like this is good. This is good tier Marvel Cinematic Universe film. It doesn't... I literally cannot, with people like trying to stack this up to like first Reformed, and I know that you have sort of like lukewarm feelings about First Reformed and shit.
I like that movie.
Yeah, but it's like but I just
well, I think you've got a different audience there.
Yeah, I know that's a totally different audience. Yeah, but I did like this film, so that is my recommendation for Avengers: Infinity War. And one thing I really did like about it,
Endgame.
Avengers Endgame. Sorry.
No, it was Infinity War Part 2, and it was right.
Whatever. One thing I was really surprised about was going into it for 3 hours. I was like, Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker isn't even fucking 3 hours. Like, why the fuck is it this long? And I'm just like, no, it actually made use of its runtime effectively, I think. And that's a compliment that I can give to it, because I think that was my chief criticism going into the film, thinking about, like, this better be fucking worth 3 hours. And I'm just like, yeah, they did a good job.
In a lot of ways, it felt like they did put 3 movies in one instead of the opposite, which is what they usually do, which is this isn't really enough for one movie, but we had to call it one.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. As a culmination of what this franchise has been doing, it was surprisingly successful. I think the only reason why it's good, though, is because it came at the expense of a lot of the films prior, which is that they weren't allowed to have moments that were like in this because, they were trying to plan towards a quote-unquote endgame, and I could see that. They don't want their movies to stand out until they're allowed to, and I feel like now that I see how entertaining this one, I mean, this movie had literal everything from genuine grief to time travel shenanigans to crazy battle scenes featuring every Avenger to just the most whatever to Bruce Banner in a diner, like just anything you can think of it was thrown into this movie. But no movie before this is given that kind of leeway.
I will say,
which is really just to finish that sentence, which is really against the spirit of comics in general. I mean, that's the fun of picking up an issue is you have no idea what they're going to do, whereas for a lot of these past movies, you knew exactly what was going to happen and what they were allowed to do, which is a very broad spectrum.
Something that this film does, which is really important, I think, and I'm guessing most people would probably agree with this, is that you've kind of been led to water by Marvel for the last 11 years of being like, this is going somewhere, and then it could have been very easy for them to get here and be like, here's kind of conclusion, but come back next week to see what happens. And yet this feels like a general firm conclusion for the majority of the main characters in this story. And I think that's important because it's, we're not going to continuously have Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, having to be the character that's talked about all the time, like the Skywalker family in Star Wars. Like, we've reached a conclusion there. That's the end. And yes, you could maybe come back with Morgan or Pepper at some point in the future and have some kind of, I don't know, some sort of story there. But at the same time, like, Robert Downey Jr. is done. He's served his purpose. He gave you a great send-off. And we're done with that story now. We can move on to another story. And I think that was important to do that because it felt like at one point that they probably wouldn't. So it's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I give it 3.5 out of 5. It was basically, like I said, it worked, and I was surprised by that. And there's so many scenes in here that are winning, and I'm glad I saw it in a theater full of a lot of people who liked it and loved it, even if they got a little too loud and a little too rowdy for this old boy's taste. But it still doesn't quite dispel any qualifiers that these films have, which is like keeping any level of progressivism to a bare minimum and also kind of stunting character arcs so that they only have a beginning, middle, and end, and no nuance in between, and a few other things that just ticks me off about Marvel, like, I'm sorry, but the Russos and Marvel in general have no visual style. Like, they can capture action, sometimes at least. Like, I thought the battle scenes were pretty bad because while the individual moments were good, they weren't in any way... I mean, there's only so much you can do if your entire last 40 minutes is going to take place in a green screen warehouse. You know, you can just only put the camera down and hope that you can, but you can't. Anyway, but I just think the Marvel house style is so fucking boring, and I'm sorry, but I'll bring it up, but go see a movie like Shazam, where I thought David F. Sandberg, I forgot his name exactly, which is bad, whatever. But that shows you that DC, for all of its faults, which are numerous, are actually letting directors come in and direct those movies and actually give them a distinctive style and thought process when it comes to storyboarding and shot composition. And Marvel is never going to let that happen. And it's kind of sad because we're 22 films in, and I'm sorry, but this would be the jumping off point to start a new era, and I'm sure they're only going to double down on that kind of visual ingenuity, so to speak. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. It definitely did not justify the 21 films that came before, but I give it credit for at least landing the plane.
Okay, right on. If you out there in podcasting land have any thoughts on Avengers Endgame, you can always send them on to us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can always look for us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Film Tank Show, or you can listen to all of our episodes on iTunes or Stitcher at Film Tank Show as well. And if you want to rate or review our podcast on there, we always really do appreciate that as well. I think we're going to try again next week to do an episode on Black Swan.
Are we?
Unless you guys are against that.
No, I just didn't know.
Because we have tried for 2 weeks in a row previous to this and failed for a couple different reasons, mostly being me. So I think we're going to maybe try again next week.
Okay.
Unless you want to do something else.
No, I had no idea what we were doing. So
okay, well, there you go. I think
we
should go for it.
All right.
I think we should do it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll plan on that next week.
Okay.
Okay. So
right.
Thank you, as always, to Anna for joining us. It's always great to have you. So
thank you so much for having me back. I always love being here. So
well, wonderful.
We
are glad to have you. So from Anna and Toussaint, Nick, myself, Alex Diekman, thank everybody for joining us here on Film Tank. We'll be catching up with you next time.
We are Film Tank.